From the battlefield to the boardroom, Austin Turnquest has lived a life most only read about. A former Special Forces operator turned entrepreneur, he's built his legacy not on comfort, but on risk, discipline, and grit. Today he's channeling that same warrior mindset into Live 21, pushing boundaries, tearing down excuses, and redefining what it means to lead. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a blueprint for building a life that outlives you. On this episode of Tactical Tequila Podcast with your host, Matt Wilson. If you enjoy the show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it to your social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. Matt with Tactical Tequila here. Tonight's show, have a great show planned for you. Not only a good friend of mine, but he is a former, retired Green Beret. Austin Turnquest went from kicking down doors with U.S. Army Special Forces to breaking down walls in business. Now with Live 21, he's building a legacy where excuses don't survive and grit is the only currency. Austin, welcome to the show. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the opportunity. What's going on, Matt? How you been, boy?
Good. So this show's going to be a little bit different. You know, you and I talked a little bit beforehand, back and forth through text, and had a phone call. And just before this, you asked if we wanted to cheers. Well, yes, I want to cheers, but I'm also going to raise a glass to your dad, who recently passed away. My condolences to you and your family.
Appreciate that, brother. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And just to dive into things, what's the darkest thing that combat has taught you about human nature?
That there's some real evil out here in the world.
Do you trust people more in war or business?
In war.
What's the biggest lie that entrepreneurs tell themselves?
It's going to be easy.
It's never easy. Never easy. When legacy is on the line, what are you willing to sacrifice most that most people wouldn't?
Money.
And what's your daily non-negotiable for greatness?
Be honest.
I like that. Honesty is key. And when it comes to the tequila side of things, entrepreneurs, owners, they're all now... The consumer wants transparency. They want honesty. They want to know what's in the glass. And you couldn't have said that any better than that.
Yeah. I mean, you said rapid fire, so I'm giving you answers as they're popping in my head. I want to be as, transparent, organic as possible,
I like it. And, I'm little diving into your background, your childhood and growing up and everything. What kind of man was your father behind closed doors? Was he a disciplinarian, a dreamer? Was he both?
He was a disciplinarian. Absolutely. So like growing up, me and him didn't have the greatest relationship. It was like later in life that I kind of like almost recently, really, when I started kind of understanding the method to his madness and why he was such a disciplinarian. But yeah, I'll be honest with you. My growing up with him was extremely rough, very tumultuous. And that may have fueled a lot of the things that came later in life for me. But yeah, it was rough shit.
Which of his flaws do you still wrestle with, and which of his strengths do you wear as more of like a coat of armor?
Oof. So flaws, I think, was probably not finding balance between being a disciplinarian and then still being able to show that love, right? Like I found out later in life, and this is when he was, you know, he'd known he had ALS for a while at this point, and I'd asked him, you know, why were you so ridiculously hard? You know what I mean? Like at unnecessarily hard. And he said, he was like, because you can't raise wolves by treating them like puppies. And for me to hear that, like later on, it's like, man, I get it. You know what I mean? And then learning a little bit more about him from my Uncle Steve, ironically, who is kind of connected to me and you a little bit more than you may know, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. So as far as flaws go, that would probably be the one that's the one that kind of drives me with my son and my daughter now, is trying to find that fucking balance, because the world ain't soft, and I'm not gonna treat you like it is, so there will be discipline, but at the same time, like, I balance it off by showing that love and holding and hugging and kissing, you know what I'm saying? Like my daughter, she lives with her mother up in Atlanta, but my son, he lives here with me, split custody with his mom. So every night he's here, he falls asleep in my lap every night. That's where he falls asleep, and then I carry him to bed. Just got a bunch of different routine things where I'm constantly right there with him, skin to skin, all these different things, right? So that's the way I try to find the balance. Do I get on his case if I think he's like slipping or whatever? Yeah, but and same thing with my daughter, So the balance is the big thing. As far as a strength, I gotta be honest, man. My dad had a lot of strengths. And I'm man enough to be able to say that even though our relationship was rough and tumultuous, I'm still able to see that he had a lot of strengths, a lot. But I think the one that I would have to lean on the most is that he was just strong-willed, and he couldn't be defeated. Like, he could not be defeated mentally, right? So there's nothing that could like stop him from pursuing whatever that thing is that he was pursuing.
What
Yeah,
would
go
you
ahead.
say the greatest lesson that he ever taught you was?
So there's a funny one, and it holds true. And pardon your audience. Ass, cash, or grass, nobody rides for free. Nobody. So that I say that in jest, but there is one. His thing is not to jump into religion or anything like that, but he loved to talk about how he makes heaven here on earth, right? Like, you are responsible for everything that is around you, right? Whether you allow it to be in your space or not, and then how good or bad you make your life, right? If you don't want to put forth any effort, it'll be shit. If you want the greatest lifestyle in the world, it takes a lot of work. Trying to find that balance is a challenge, but that's the biggest thing, is like, make your heaven where you stand, to actually quote him directly. Make heaven where you stand.
And
So go
and
ahead.
now with that, when life hits you hardest, do you hear his voice or do you hear your own?
Oof. Probably more his than mine. It's crazy, like, especially seeing that how terrible our relationship was, all the way into adulthood, you know, and to still constantly hear his voice. Like, I told him, I'm like, he thought I wasn't listening growing up, right? But I told him like later on, I'm like, I ain't forget, you know? And then he'll hear like me say things like, you taught me how to make heaven where I stand. That's what I'm doing, you know? Um, he was like, you were listening. I'm like, yeah, no, I mean, you had some jewels. The delivery on those jewels was a little jacked up, but I heard him, you know?
Do you feel like there was ever a moment that you realized that you'd finally become the man that he tried to build you into?
You said, say the beginning of your question again.
So, was there ever a moment when you realized that you'd finally become the man that he tried to build you into?
Um, so hmm, I think like when I was graduating the the Q course, well, the Special Forces Qualification course, um, I think that he 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 kind of not kind of he showed like real respect even before then, but like when I got my Green Beret, that was like a pivotal moment for him as far as a father, like seeing his son develop. Now, mind you, I'd already experienced a lot of crazy stuff, and you were very familiar with that as well. Hey, audience, don't let Matt fool you. My boy was a dog back in the day, and we were both MPs together, which is where we know each other from. I don't like how you skip across that, because yeah, man, yeah, I remember. You know what I'm saying? Um, but going to and from Afghanistan, Iraq twice. Um, like I would come home and he was like, yo, he'd be like picking my brain, you know, and you can see like the approval, but that real approval came from when I went special forces and got my Green Beret and was like, oh shit. Almost maybe in a sense that maybe I surpassed him, you know, um, which let me be very clear. My dad was no slouch by any sense of the word, but maybe, you know, there was a little bit of that. And I think, you know, one of his exes may have kind of alluded to that too. Because, you know, pillow talk is a real thing. So there may have been times where he had said something to her and she ended up later on in life calling me and telling me. But yeah.
So, as you grew up, and your dad being the disciplinarian and trying to build you into the man that you are today, would you feel like your childhood was built more on survival, structure, or maybe faith?
Structure. Yeah. Yeah. He was a very structured dude. So my dad, like, and I'm sure I'm certain you saw that picture on Instagram. But my dad was a grandmaster in martial arts. I think his discipline was karate. Um, so he was extremely disciplined. Um, like very, very disciplined, very structured dude. And yeah, it was a lot of structure in his on his side of the house. Now, I didn't live with him. It was like visitation because him and my mom were sharing custody. It was joint custody type of situation. So like every other weekend and then a couple days throughout the week or whatever. But a lot of structure. Like when I was playing baseball growing up, we would go and practice before practice. He would make sure he threw me like 100 baseballs before I went to practice. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of like structure there. You need to read these books. And was he heavy handed with a lot of the stuff? He was heavy handed in general, let me be very clear. But like, even with some of these things, like, yo, I'm a kid. Why am I reading Dr. Ben Carson's book at fucking 10 years old? You know what I mean? Like, come on. You know what I'm saying? I, do I remember any parts of that book? Absolutely not. Was it a struggle? Was it a nightmare? Yeah, it was. But there was like structure. It didn't make a lot of it didn't make sense. You know, even now, like I think to myself, but I've had my daughter when she was 10 reading a book as deep as Dr. Ben Carson's book on how he became a brain surgeon. Like, come on, man. At 10, that's crazy. you know. So it was a lot of structure, you know. Maybe some misguided, or maybe he just was really just wanting me to be ahead of the fucking the curve, you know. Which if I had to take a stab at it, that was probably the case. But you know, that was just one thing that stuck out to me. The autobiography of Malcolm X. I was reading that like at 9 years old, 8 years old. You know, a very important book, but did I fully understand it at that age? No, you know. But yeah, a lot of structure.
So, in talking about your childhood there and the structure, do you feel like there's one memory in particular that shapes the way that you lead today?
Not necessarily a memory, but just his just day to day life. He was just like I said, kind of a very disciplined dude. Yeah, I don't think there's because I don't necessarily have a memory of him leading outside of me, right? So I never saw him in leadership roles in front of people that work for him. I mean, he retired as the assistant fire chief for the city of West Palm Beach, right? But I never saw him lead others, and I couldn't appreciate how he was leading me until like later on in life. But yeah,
So, if you were to look back at it now, do you feel like he was preparing you for the world the way that it is now, or preparing the world for you?
yeah. So he was prepared for the world. Um, so he's born, pretty certain. Forgive me, old man, if I mess this up, but he was born, I'm pretty certain, in the 60s. Um, so, you know, for a young black male living in the South in the 60s, shit was rough. So I think that's what kind of fueled him to go so hard with like martial arts. And probably my Uncle Steve too. But I think that's what fueled them. Um, which my Uncle Steve ended up being his sensei, which um
I saw in the picture on Instagram that he was bracing himself. Your dad was bracing himself on the brick, if I remember correctly, and your uncle was breaking something
correct.
over
Yeah, so
your
my
dad.
dad he was posted on two different cinder blocks. So if these are the two cinder blocks, and then my dad had his shoulders here and his feet here, there's nothing in the middle, and he's stabilizing some cinder blocks on his chest or his abdomen or whatever. And my Uncle Steve is swinging a sledgehammer, and my dad is just trying to basically just tense his entire core up enough to where he doesn't just get smashed to the ground. And you can see in the picture, like the bricks are completely demolished, and my dad's like his butt or his bottom is not touching the ground. And you can see in his face like the sheer focus and, you know, concentration there. Yeah.
So now I just kind of want to switch gears and move into your military career and your military experience. What was the moment in Special Forces that still keeps you up at night?
So I'll be honest, nothing keeps me up at night. I think a lot of that has to do with a couple things. One, you know, I went to therapy and I actually did the work there. And two, I think I was having this conversation with somebody here recently. It's like, man, like, would I be able to cope the way that I cope with the things that I saw throughout my career had it not been for my upbringing? I don't know. But, you know, there's been times where I've had guys call me in the middle of the night, you know, crying because they were having issues with things that they experienced in the past, you know, things that we saw or things that we were exposed to, right? And I haven't had those moments. But like I said, I have to attribute a lot of that to the things that I experienced growing up, and how I was raised. And then I'll also like actually like doing the work, going to therapy and actually like talking about it. One of the things that I know that I am, which most guys are not, is I'm an open book. Like I'll talk. Um, if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. And, I'm going to try to keep it as honest and keep it as P as possible. But I'm going to give you an answer. But
For
yeah, I think part of that helps out with the coping piece. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
and for me, like, I'm a huge proponent in therapy as well. Like,
Yeah.
I think that just having that objective ear and objective voice to bounce everything that you have going on with inside you and not have any of the judgment that you would have from family members, from significant others, or even just friends that just one don't understand how you're feeling.
Right.
You know, therapy has done amazing things for a ton of people, and I'm a huge proponent on therapy.
Absolutely.
Every therapy's not for everyone, um, but there's also a lot of other coping mechanisms that aren't for other people as well. It's just wherever, going back to the beginning, where you can find that balance.
So I think I'll be honest with you. I think therapy is for everyone. I don't think structured therapy is for everyone, but you can find therapy in talking to plants. I do. Like you can see one of my babies behind me right now. Like I got a ton of plants around this house, and that is my therapy. Like I will, spray my plants down and wipe the dust off of them and talk to them, and I name all of them. This is Mo behind me. um, but yeah, like I will do that. Like
It's
I talk to him. So I think therapy is for everybody. It's just trying to find that thing. Some people actually use the service animals, right? That's their therapy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I do think everybody deserves something they can, I guess, find, I guess, therapeutic to get their things off to. I don't care if it's an imaginary friend, something, you know what I mean? Because I
By the
know
way,
I've seen the effects of people not having anybody or anything to get that off of. And it's not cool.
yeah, it's definitely not good. Well, it's not good on both spectrums. It's not good for the person that's dealing with it, but it's also not good for the people around them that they're projecting what they're going through on them, and, making them more or less deal with how they're acting and behaving when they need to be dealing with what's inside of them first.
Absolutely. Like I think like don't jump into a relationship if you haven't done the work internally. You know what I'm saying? Fix yourself before you go and put that on somebody else. I 100% agree.
If you
Um,
can't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. That's
can't
my
love
that's
no,
my
you can't
motto.
love anybody else. I agree with that. I'm gonna throw a little fact out there for you. Um, and I believe that this could have been a byproduct of people not being able to, get those things off in a therapy or therapy that they may have needed. But the 108th MP company that we belong to, um, I think by the time I left, that that roster that we had leading up, let's just say from '01 to '06 is when I left, 10% of those people from that unit have committed suicide. 10%. We've had like somewhere around like 110 dudes on the roster.
Yeah,
10% of those dudes have committed suicide. And I do believe that part of that was because of, well, one, back then, you kind of got looked at as the weird guy if you had issues, right? This is
yep,
before we knew what PTSD was, right? You got looked at as the weird kid. And because we were so in the fight, I mean, we were doing back to back deployments. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you're so in the fight that you didn't want to be the guy that stood out for being or a guy having problems or mental problems. Because, you didn't want to be that guy back then. Now, everybody understands it now. So you got CAG dudes and DevGru dudes. And if they can go to fucking therapy, everybody else up underneath can go to therapy. I think it's dope that they actually jump on podcasts and talk about that, because there's no exceptions. Go do the work. You got the most badass dudes in the world that are doing the work. Go do the work. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
RIP to those guys and their families. My condolences to their families. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah. To the boys.
We'll raise one to the boys.
For the boys.
So do you think that the battlefield taught you more about life or more about yourself?
Oof. I think a little bit of both, man. So I learned a lot about myself in training. And I also learned a lot about myself in combat. But I think I learned the most about the world in combat, and how good we actually have it here, and how much shit we take for granted here. Like, we take a lot for granted. Something as simple as running water or a fucking toilet to shit in. We take a lot for granted. And I think if, the people that, just Americans, right? If they knew some of the things that we knew or experienced, even just culturally, I'm not even talking about combat wise, just culturally, if they've experienced some of the things that you and I have experienced, right? Overseas, I think people would appreciate the things that they have here a lot more.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, even on the tours to Iraq, where basically running water in Iraq wasn't necessarily a luxury to most people, where they would have water tanks on the roof of their house,
Mm-hmm.
in order to facilitate them wanting to take showers
Mm-hmm.
or, something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even, my first deployment, which was 03 to 04, we were in Mosul at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of the roof of where we were staying, we had a water blivet. In the wintertime, half the time you took cold showers because
It's sitting outside and it's
it's
going
sitting outside and it's
yeah,
that temperature. And we
yeah,
didn't have
whatever that
water
temperature
heaters.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So literally you're taking like a 30-second shower because it's so cold.
Oh, cold. Oh man.
And getting back into things, what would you say the hardest decision that you ever had to make was when lives were on the line?
Hardest decision, putting myself in the line of fire. Um, there's a couple. One was putting myself in the line of fire, and then two, recognizing that I wasn't strong enough, and then taking testosterone to fucking boost my strength. That was in Baghdad. Yeah. Like, there was a time, so let's back up, because we'll talk about putting self in the line of fire. Um, you you don't necessarily think about it, you just do. You've been trained, you're drilling yourself, on what to do when certain things happen. Um, like, so I had I don't know if you remember Benavidez, but
Yeah.
he was my driver. Also went on to be an SF guy, right? But then there was a guy named Barnhart. Shout out to Barnhart, wherever you at, man. Shout out to you, brother. But I used to drill these guys on tactics and what we're gonna do if this truck blew up. And we'd just be riding down the road and we'd just be having that conversations. What happens if the rear truck blows up? What happens if this blows up? So when those things happened, we were reacting. And if it meant putting yourself in the line of fire to make sure that, you know, you were taking care of and saving lives and protecting life, we just did that. You know what I mean? So MSR Tampa, boy. Yeah.
And
So
Irish.
that, and then what's that?
And Irish.
Irish. And Red Wings.
Yes.
And then also Sword. So MSR Sword showed me that I wasn't strong enough. Right. So a little bit of background. When I first joined the Army, or when I was getting ready to join the Army, my recruiter my recruiter took me down to the MEPS, which is down in Miami. And back then I was wearing like these big FUBU jeans. Shout out to Damon John. I was wearing FUBU jeans and they were so baggy. They had no idea how little I was in my clothes. So when I show up to the MEPS and they do my height and weight, they were like, "Hey bro, you're underweight. We can't even enlist you." I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, you need to gain like 5 pounds." So my recruiter ended up taking me back home to West Palm Beach. And for the next 2 weeks, my recruiter would come to my door every day with a protein shake and watch me drink this every day. Until I gained the 5 pounds, and then I was able to enlist, go off, you know, whatever. So that was in 01, like the end of 2000, beginning of 01. So let's fast forward to Baghdad. And there was a truck on MSR Sword. So we were doing MSR security then, right? So we were driving up and down routes, and then we're just really just paying attention and looking out for anything crazy, but particularly IEDs and things like that. If we needed to, we would cordon, call EOD out, blah, 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 right? And blow it in place, bipped it, whatever. So we were on the return of this particular route, and there was a convoy that was stopped. One of the trucks was rolled over on its side. And we pulled up on the rear truck, and I remember there was a full-bird colonel who was just frozen and couldn't do anything. His truck hadn't been hit or anything, but the truck in front of him, the middle truck, had been hit with an EFP, right? And I know you remember how devastating an EFP was. That I'm not gonna lie, that was probably some of the scariest times when we heard about EFPs. A lot of dudes were surviving from IED blasts. Very rare you heard about dudes surviving EFP blasts. And even now, like, just remembering is kind of like, it's a little scary just even thinking about, and after experiencing and seeing certain things, it's kind of scary. But the truck that was in front of him was blown on its side. This colonel was frozen. I was like, "Have you called up a 9-line?" And he had said no. Actually, he didn't respond. I don't think he responded at all. He was just frozen. So we go to the vehicle. We move to the vehicle, and there are 2 guys that were KIA inside the vehicle, and one of the guys was still alive in the vehicle. And I crawled in there to try to get him out to provide first aid, but the vehicle was rolled on its side, and I was not strong enough. This guy's in full kit. He's in full battle rattle, and I was not strong enough to be able to pull him out. The other guys that were on the team were like too big to get in there in the manner in which he needed to get in there. And I felt horrible, man. I felt horrible. We ended up getting him out. I think I ended up hopping out, and I let like maybe some of the other guys attend to him. Some of that's kind of blurry in my head, but I remember calling up the 9-line, and I just remember them being able to pull the guy out, and we got him on the bird and we got him medevaced. I don't know what happened to him or anything like that. You know, back then, like, you kind of just lose track of things like that. Dudes fly off to go get next level of care, and you never even hear about them again. Like that was the thing back then, and then even later on in 2012 when I was in Afghanistan, right? So it just is what it is. But I knew in that moment, it's like, I need to be stronger. And I was taking my PT seriously, but not the gym. And I was like, the gym isn't going to be enough. So I ended up like injecting myself with like testosterone and things like that just to be stronger. And I put on that rotation. Were you on the Baghdad rotation with us?
In 0506?
0506?
Yeah.
Okay. In that rotation, I gained like 30 pounds and I got significantly stronger. And I just vowed to never let that be a fucking problem again. I can't even remember. What was your original question?
You've hit it right on the nose, and
Yeah.
it leads into my next question. So talking about the gaining weight, how do you carry the weight of command when failure isn't an option?
I mean, in SF, we do a good job of sharing the fucking weight. Right. Like operating in a small team, I'm telling you, it's different. Back when we operated in platoons, so it's 30 dudes. You feel me? 30 men and women for us as MPs, right? But even in a squad, that's still 10 guys, 10 people, right? In special forces, and then when we're deployed, there's still an overwhelming support element that's there, right? That's not necessarily the case when you're on an ODA and you're in an austere environment. It's just you guys. You may have a couple enablers, but they're not Green Berets, and they're also not dudes you necessarily train with. They may have just gotten here, the such and such MI battalion is tagging along, or PSYOPs guys are going to tag along, or K9 guy is going to tag along, or EOD guy is going to tag along, or even an infantry squad is going to tag along. The relationship obviously isn't the same because we don't know these guys. We build a relationship over time, and we had some really good dudes that we worked with, men and women. But the team, right? We do a really good job of sharing the problems, the triumphs, everything. So it's never anything that one person has to take all by himself. Even the ODA commander, right? Like he'll share some of that, what I'm saying, with us, if he has a good team, you know what I mean? So I don't think I've ever had to share the load. And I also have never been in command per se, right? I've been in charge of things, but not in command. But yeah.
I mean, tomato,
Fair. Okay.
So in your whole military service, is there any part of the military grit that you apply to business now?
Yeah. So working as a team is the thing, right? Me and, the guys over at Live 21, we are brothers, and we've created like a brotherhood amongst us, right? These are my guys. You know what I mean? Like I'm their guy, and they're mine. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it is like on the Special Forces ODA. These are your guys. You're going to weddings. You're best man at weddings. He may be the officiant for your wedding, which that was the case for me. You know what I mean? Big shout out to Chase. Love you, boy. He was the officiant at my wedding. You know what I mean? So, yeah, if there was something I had to take from, being in the military, is working as a team is optimal. You can't be defeated if you're all supporting each other. You know what I mean?
And so now transitioning over to the entrepreneurial side of things, what do you feel like the boldest risk that you've taken as an entrepreneur is, and did it nearly break you at any point?
So I'll be honest, man. I try to be as calculated as possible. Try not to take too much risk. I will say anytime you invest into a startup, it is a risk, but try to be as calculated as possible. Um, that's something I learned. One of the things I learned from my dad, and then a close friend of mine named Willie. He was around back in our day, but he wasn't an MP. He was in the Air Force. But um, you try to be as calculated as possible. Now, I will say, with the pension and VA benefits, it allows you to take a little bit more risk than if you have no type of support like that. Um, but try to be, you know, yeah, try to be as calculated as possible.
For the listeners and the viewers out there that don't know what Live 21 is, can you kind of just go into what Live 21 is and how you guys came about?
Yeah, so the story is Mike and Reggie, they were the original founders of Live 21, right? And they were going down to South Beach for Memorial Day weekend, right? It's a good time, and it's something that me, Eck, and Willie we've experienced multiple times. You know what I mean? Um, Down in Miami, it's a good time. It's not as cool anymore. So if you're going out there nowadays, they've shut a lot of that stuff down. It was a lot more fun back in the day. Anyway, but they were going down there, and they were like, "Hey, man, we need to stop and get some Pedialyte." Because we're gonna be partying all weekend and we're gonna be dehydrated and we gotta like replenish our electrolytes. Man, he was like, man, wouldn't it be dope if we could just replenish while we were at the spot versus having to stop at Walgreens, buy this, chug it. It tastes like, no disrespect. It doesn't taste good. You know what I mean? But yeah, like it's like, why would we do that? We should try to create something that, allows us to hydrate while we're partying. We don't have to make a special stop for it specifically. And Live 21 was born out of that trip, right? Fast forward, they actually have created and designed a product, beautiful bottle, but they created the bottle, they created the formula, and they have a great product. And I remember on their launch, I'd heard about it through a friend, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you gotta try this." And I was like, "What is it?" It was at his birthday party. He was like, "Yeah, you got to try this, man." It's like, "What is this?" He was like, "You won't have a hangover. I promise you that." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." So I'm like, "All right, cool." He was like, "They're actually doing a launch party." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "You got to check it out." So I went to the launch party. I got an invite, and they gave us gift bags. So, I took the gift bag home. I intentionally got like tore up, right? And um I tried it. And the next morning I was like, yo, this shit works. Like, that's crazy. Like, wait. I was like, I gotta try this again. So, and I told my wife at the time, I was like, yo, this works. She's like, you don't feel anything? I was like, nah. And I'm like, drinking as much as I drank, I would have felt something. It's like, you don't feel anything. I was like, I feel bright eyed and bushy tailed. And she's like, you gonna try it again? I was like, I am. So I waited for the following weekend and tried it again, and it worked. And I was like, you got to try this. So I told my ex, I was like, you got to try this. She tried it. She was like, this works. So I'm like, okay, these guys are on to something. And maybe a month later at the most, I happened to be at um, a place getting some food, and I ran into him, and I was like, hey, is this is yours, right? And he's like, yeah. I was like, and you got something. And we had some conversations. I brought two guys on board with me. One who's a really close friend, and then the other one who's a close friend who was also a Green Beret. And we retired out of the same place here at McDill. Um, and he's like kind of more of a business mentor. So I was like, hey, what are y'all thoughts? We can sit down and have a meeting with this guy. And next thing you know, all of us sitting at the table. Reggie liked what we had to present. We loved what they presented. We came together on a number, and things took off from there. But Live 21 is it's a recovery beverage. If you think of a Gatorade has about 300 milligrams of electrolytes. We're sitting at just over 1,000. And we have quite a bit of good things in here. I'm gonna just read some of them off
Okay.
directly off the bottle, and this is a Live 21 bottle. This black is the blackberry pineapple, which was our second flavor, and then our original flavor is the lemon berry. Um, but I'm gonna read some of these things off because I think some of these things can be overlooked. We go and drink Gatorade, and you thinking that you're getting, you know, some A1 ingredients, and some of those ingredients are probably not, probably going to be to your liking. For example, we don't use any high fructose corn syrup or sucralose or any artificial sweeteners. Um, Originally, on the original formula we did, and we did surveys, and the information that we were getting back, the feedback that we were getting back from the customer was like, hey, can you take out the artificial sweeteners? Like, absolutely. So we switched from high fructose corn syrup and sucralose to cane sugar and agave. um, so that's one of the main things that we've changed. But you have vitamin A, you got B6, B12, which we all know you're going to need a little bit of energy, right? So that's one of the beautiful things that our product does, is it's going to provide you a little bit of boost too. So even while you're out having a good time, you're going to provide you with a little boost. Additionally, this is not a hangover recovery beverage. It is a recovery beverage. Let me just interject here. If I go and ride a bike 10 miles, 12 miles, the first thing I do is I pound a Live 21 to replenish my body with those electrolytes. It's also a coconut water based beverage. So it is literally meant to replenish things that you deplete between vitamins, electrolytes, and things like that. After you're done with whatever that activity is, if it's a night of drinking or a day full of drinking, and if it's you're going out and you're doing some type of physical training. So yeah.
So now, when failure hits, if it hits, how do you deal with it differently coming from a military world?
So it's kind of like a no fail mission. So there was an organization that I belonged to, and within special forces, where there are no fail missions. Um see. Yeah, kind of just, I don't want to say too much there, but there are no fail missions. This is no different, right? You may have setbacks, but you can't fail, right? And I think everybody on the team understands that, right? That this is a no fail mission.
So now you've had dirty fights in the military, I'm presuming. What's the dirtiest fight that you've had in business?
I haven't had any dirty fights, I'll be honest. There have been some things that, we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on with, third parties or whatever, but dirty fighting, never really experienced that. Yeah, I haven't dealt with anything dirty. We've done a good job of protecting ourselves too. Um, so I think
So,
that's one of the ways you kind of protect yourself from that, is like, you can't even be phased by dirty fighting, especially if you're protected.
so now, as far as Live 21 goes, are you only in Florida or have you guys
I got,
branched out to other states?
so we're currently mainly right here in the Tampa area. Like I said, we're still a startup. We're at around about 55 different locations. Um, I would say the 99% of them are right here in the Tampa area. That other 1% is in sporadic places throughout the country. A place in Boston, there's a place in Orlando, things like that. But yeah, majority of everything is right here.
Are there any future growth plans as far as branching out into other states that you currently aren't in?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's some things that's happening right now. I don't want to say too much, but there are some things that are happening right now, and we will be expanding into other markets shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much. Like I'm real cautious on that, But
Fair
yeah,
enough. Fair enough.
yeah,
And that's completely understandable. Dealing with some brands and they don't want to talk about some projects that they have in the works. I get it.
yeah,
Totally
yeah.
get it. What's one rule from the battlefield that you feel or that you refuse to break in business?
It's just business. If you think about it, like, let's go back. You remember when we had the short-term holding facility in Afghanistan in '01? Were you on that? Were you on the
I,
Afghanistan? You
I,
came after it.
yeah.
Okay. So let's go back real quick. We had a short-term holding facility. So we're all the Delta guys, the CIA guys, and the SF guys were pulling bad dudes out of the mountains in Afghanistan, and they would bring them to our short-term holding facility, right? Like we had hundreds of dudes in cells, and they were like Taliban dudes. And as an MP, part of one of the things that we do is uh what was it? What was the MOS? It's like the Charlies. What were the Charlies called? They were
The cage kickers.
we called them cage kickers, but
Confinement.
they were they were like the corrections
Confinement.
officers.
Confinement. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So but we end up having to do that as, a double MOS type of thing in Afghanistan. And there were a lot of dudes in there that may have been rubbing elbows with the wrong people, which is what got them there in prison. Like, you can't hang out with a bunch of Taliban dudes. And when, you know what I'm saying? And CAD come rolling in and roll you motherfuckers up. You can't come hanging out with a bunch of Taliban dudes and thinking like, well, I'm not. You getting rounded up, and we'll sort it out on the back end, right? So you hear all kinds of stories, just like any corrections officer here at any prison and anywhere in the world, right? Hey, it's just business. It's just business. You know what I mean? Hopefully we get the business sorted out. But for right now, it's just business. It's no different out here in the real world. We have, people that may show interest, and then later on they back off, and it's like, hey, it's just business, and that is what it is, But it's no different out there in combat. It's just business.
Now I want to move forward into the Quest legacy because and for those of you for those listeners and viewers that don't know, you go by Quest.
Yeah.
For the longest time that I've known you as Quest. Like I
Hmm.
mean, I've known your full name, but you
Sure.
know, everybody knows you as Quest.
Sure.
Do you ever feel pressure knowing that your legacy is being written in real time?
Do I feel pressure? No. So there's this quote that I try my best to live by, and it is, be who you are and say what you will, because those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter. Right. So I don't feel any pressure. It is what it is. You know what I mean? You're gonna get and I had to learn that, right? Because there was a lot of things that used to make me cringe on how I used to be when I was younger, probably even back when you knew me. I used to cringe at that later on in life. And it's like, man, like some of that had to happen in order to get what you see now. You know what I mean? Not that I'm much,
I
but
mean,
in order for me to be the man that I am today, like I had to go through and I had to be some of these things. Um, so now I don't let any of that pressure or any of that get to me. Um, I try my best to just walk very lightly and live very lightly, right? And there's only a handful of things that actually really matter in the world. And I'll just be honest with you, it's my kids. Outside of that, what really what really matters, right? The happiness of my children is is it. You know, that's the thing. Um like things that
How about your happiness?
I mean, that's where I find my happiness is seeing. So, and I made a post today. Like one of the things that makes me that made me extremely happy is like from the time my son has been able to eat table food all the way up until like today, I've made him a pancake every morning. And it doesn't matter if we wake up late or whatever, breakfast, that's what he wanted, pancake. And I made it a point every time. I don't I don't care how tired or whatever that I am, you know. One of the things that helps out with that is Live 21. Um but like there's never a time where I'm like, I can't make you a pancake this morning. That's never. And then today was like the first day that he's like, I don't want a pancake. So, you know, we replaced it with a banana and two oranges. But, you know, I find happiness in things like that. Um, yeah, like I'm gonna be honest with you, you're gonna be hard pressed in 2025 to kick the smile off my face. I'm just be real, you know. Yeah, so I'm very happy, and like I said, I think a lot of that had to do with understanding that a lot of the BS in the world doesn't matter. Life is very simple if you just tune out all the BS. It's very, very, very simple, right? Um, so like the things that people think matter, like debt and I got into a car accident and it just take a step back. That shit does not matter. Okay. It really doesn't. And it does not matter. I'm telling you, your kids being able to wake up in the morning and saying, "Hey, how'd you sleep, Dad?" Like, like what else is there on the planet? You know what I mean? Like I get to take my son to jujitsu. My daughter just turned, you know, she just turned 15. She's hanging out and having a great time with her friends at Fright Fest at Six Flags. And, you know, like what else is there for real? You know? And being able to provide that, you know, and I guess help facilitate their happiness makes me happy.
So when it all comes to an end, you're 6 feet in the ground or to ashes, whatever your choice is. What do you want your legacy to be summed up in one sentence?
He lived, he fucked up, he lived, he was successful, he loved, and he lived.
Moving on from a heavy topic there, how do you balance building wealth and building an impact?
So I'll be honest, I'm not focused on building either one of those per se, right? Like obviously I want Live 21 and other things I invested in to be successful. Right? Don't get me wrong. That is what I would like. Um and I'm not focused on like making an impact. I'm just because I think that's where the BS comes in. Like the BS that I was just talking about, that if you tune out the BS, like life is so simple, right? I think if you focus too much on certain things like that, then it takes the fun out of life. Like, are you making heaven where you stand at that point? You know what I mean? Um, so I'll be honest with you, I don't think too much on those things. That may sound kind of fucked up, but I don't. I'm not trying to necessarily make an impact. Is how I'm living making an impact? Yeah, it is. Like I think the people are your report card, right? So when people come back and tell you hey, thank you for that. I needed that. Or I saw you do X, Y, and Z, and I did the exact same thing. And, that helped out tremendously. I appreciate that. The people are your report card. So, you know, you make an impact and I'm not even focused on making an impact. I'm just fucking living my life. You know what I'm saying? Um,
In those little ways, and we don't realize it while we're in the moment, but at some point we make an impact on at least one or two people in our lives.
sure.
Sometimes many. In doing things like this, like I've had countless people come up to me and say, "Oh, we'd loved this episode," or "We loved, listening to stuff about mental health."
Sure.
Like, it made such an impact, and we appreciate, the content that you're putting out, and, it's things like that that continue to keep me doing what I'm doing and, getting people's stories out there because, you know, I feel like something that you're doing could be impactful on, several or, a lot of the listeners or viewers that tune into the show.
Sure.
And, that's why I curate the guests that I do have, on. I think everyone that I have on has an impact on someone, some shape or form.
Right.
And it may be like two things that they resonate with throughout the entire interview, but that's two things that they were like, holy shit, like I didn't realize this until now.
Yeah. But that just comes from living, you know, and
And
talking about your organic life. You know what I mean?
and so to kind of caveat onto that and how people are your report card, and maybe you're the report card for your kids, but what part of your story do you want your children to carry on after you're gone?
All of it, you know? Like I said, I'm an open book, so they're gonna hear everything. As my son gets older, he's gonna hear everything. My daughter asks questions and I give her answers. Um, like it's not like the generations prior to us. Um, yeah, so a lot of the things that my mom found out about her history came very, very, very late in life. And it was actually like after her mother had already passed, right? Like who her real father was and things like that. She assumed it was this person and it turned out to be this person, right? Um, I'm an open book. So my kids ask me questions, I'm gonna tell them, and I'm gonna try my best to scrounge up as many pictures, that I have and show them, you know what I mean? So when it comes to carrying on things after I leave the earth, hopefully it's all of it, the good, bad, and the ugly. You know what I mean? Dad wasn't perfect. Um, he fucked up, but he loved us and he lived. Just kind of like what I was saying earlier. Like, take all that with you. Take it all with you. And hopefully all those lessons, the good ones and the bad ones, help shape you even after I leave the earth.
Continuing with legacy, and do you believe that it's built on big victories or everything that's kind of done behind the scenes?
It's all the sausage making. Pause. It's it's all the stuff that's happening in the background. Like that's I mean, if even if you think of it from like a perspective of like missions conducted, like all the real work, the 90% of the work is done in planning. Execution to me is a very small part of it. All the planning and rehearsals, all the stuff in the background that the bad dudes don't see. Um, that's that's what leads to the success of the fucking mission. Not yes, day of execution is a very important thing, right? But all the lead up prior to, yeah. So yeah, that answer your
No,
question?
in a roundabout way, yes. But I was speaking more as to your legacy. Is it the big victories with you that build your legacy, or is it everything that goes on behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, if you ask the people, it's going to be the things that they see. You know what I mean? And you can't control how people view you, I guess, or view your success. Those are going to be the lessons to them. Is, the big things, the things that's in their face, not the things that they can't see. Um, that's a tough question right there.
All right, Quest. Well, I appreciate your time. Where can everyone find you on social media?
Um, just find me at Quest and 4 underscores on Instagram. That's basically it. So,
Again, thank you for being on the show. Had a great time catching up with you.
oh wait, hold on, and also follow Live 21, just JUSTLIV, the number 21 on Instagram. Just Live 21. You guys go check it out.
There we go, folks. Just Live 21.
Appreciate you, man. Hey, thanks for this opportunity. I appreciate it. It's good to see you. Good catching up with you.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate you. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.
Later.